Murder mystery! I knew I should have changed those damn wipers back when I'd last changed the oil. Now the rain was pouring down hard, and when the rubber strip started peeling off the top of the passenger side wiper, the end of its failure was only a matter of time. Even with good rubber bands, the downpour on this paved road leading out of town reduced visibility to zero. The downpour couldn't hide the red and blue lights a few dozen meters in front of me. The sheriff's department, along with state troopers, a fire truck, and medical personnel blocked the roadway along the ravine, and I pulled over. Now that the car was parked on the curb, I could see everything more clearly. Dan Peterson, one of the sheriff's deputies and an old classmate who lives in our neighborhood, came to my rolled-down window. "Good evening, Barry. It's a hell of a night to be on a call like this, don't you think?" he asked in his best imitation of his profession. "It's sure to be unpleasant," I replied. "What have you got for me?" "We've got one dead man and no one else, no witnesses, and it looks like he lost control and went down. Charlie ran the plates and found out that the car is registered to Knowles Construction, and personal ID identifies the driver as one Patrick Daniel. Knowles. Besides it being a rainy night, we got a dead driver in a car accident. You ready to take a look?" I was ready. That's what I always do unless I'm on vacation and I'm golfing and drinking my own craft ale. I'm a state court examiner, and I have to cover rural counties here in central Virginia. My name is Barry Nelson, and I work in the state office in Charlottesville. On this horrible night, I was less than a mile from my own home in a residential neighborhood in Albemarle County. Dan and I walked down to the bottom of a 76-foot ravine off Langhorne Road, and I approached the car. It was stable and upright, so there was no danger of it moving off. Another team was lowering a tethered gurney to carry the body out onto the roadway. The deceased was wearing a seatbelt, but nothing could protect him in this accident. He was impaled by a branch and bled to death right on the seat. I approached the body from the passenger side while Dan tried to open the mangled driver's side door. It had almost ripped off during the descent down the steep hill, but the crew couldn't open it. It took some work with hydraulic shears to open it fully. As the seatbelts were being cut, I looked at the passenger side floor and noticed this. It was a heart-shaped pendant with an opal in the center and a gold chain necklace that supported it between the breasts of the woman wearing it. While the team was busy digging out the body, I slipped it into my pocket and knelt down to inspect the seat. At first glance, there was nothing of interest. As I climbed up, I saw something odd. It was just a small candy wrapper, nothing unusual unless you knew where it came from. The wrapper was from a salted candy pull that was sold in various places, like a store in Oganquit, Maine, with the name Perkins Harbor Candy. I only knew this because my wife Kim and our daughter Sophie had just returned from vacation 2 weeks earlier. The team retrieved Patrick Knowles' body and carried it out to the roadway. By then, the rescue team was ready to pull the car out of the ravine. "Dan, I'm going home. I'll be at my place in the morning, do a full workup, but at this point, I don't see any signs of a crime. Looks like blunt force trauma from a tree branch through the hole in the windshield. I'll know more when I look at it tomorrow," I told the deputy. It was still raining pretty hard when I pulled up to the house. It was only a 5-minute drive from the accident site to the house, and it appeared that Knowles was headed in the opposite direction. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I wasn't ready to analyze much, but my fingers played with the pendant in my pocket. I knew what I would find there when I opened it. That, and the candy wrapper, brought up a whole host of thoughts, none of which were comforting. Kim left the nightlight on in the living room, and I made my way to the kitchen, poured a glass of orange juice, and made a bowl of cereal. This is my comfort food, a sort of refuge. Sitting there, I placed the candy wrapper on the table in front of me, and the pendant burning me in my pocket. "Bad night, Barry?" my wife asked me. Because of my anxiety, I didn't even notice her enter the room. She actually startled me and noticed it. "Oh my God, it must be something bad. You're never this nervous. I'm sorry, baby, for scaring you," she said as she came over to the table to hug me. Another fatal accident, actually, just a little further down the road. One fatality, bad road, rain. Well, you know all that. Probably was driving too fast going back to his wife, I replied. Kim made us both a cup of tea. Even in the wee hours of the morning, it's soothing. Earlier that evening, Kim had been at a realtors meeting and subsequent dinner while I covered for a colleague on duty at the office who had a family emergency. I'd never really gotten much into her business meetings and dinners. Maybe I should have been more careful. She picked up a candy wrapper from the table, looked at it perplexed, and threw it in the trash while she washed the dishes. I almost stopped her, but I let it happen. I didn't know how to approach the issue. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next morning, I finished my examination of Patrick Knowles and closed the case. As I was about to go to lunch, a petite, attractive woman approached me in the hallway. "Are you Dr. Nelson?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am, I am. What can I do for you?" I answered. "My name is Joanna Knowles. I am this man's wife," she replied before I thoughtlessly interrupted her. "Yes. I'm very sorry for your loss, Mrs. Knowles. Can we talk here?" I asked her. "If you don't mind, I'd prefer that you join me for lunch, unless, of course, you have other plans," she asked. I hesitated at first, but agreed, and we walked together to a small cafe down the street from the main entrance to the hospital. "Mr. Nelson, first of all, thank you for meeting me on such short notice, and especially under these circumstances. I don't know how you managed to do your job." She smiled a little at that last part. "Mrs. Knowles, I assure you, it is a non-issue, and you can call me Barry. It's what everyone else does," I replied. "And in the same way, Barry, please call me Joanna. The reason I asked to see you is rather complicated and difficult for me to explain, so I'll be frank. As for Mr. Knowles, who was just lying on your desk, he can stay there until he rots for all I care," she said to me. I glanced at her, wondering if I had made a mistake in agreeing to lunch. At that moment, our sandwiches arrived, and we began. "Let me explain, Barry. I know it sounded rather rude, but I wanted to set the record straight. You see, I had divorce papers drawn up this morning to give to Patrick, but I think an accident prevented that." She even chuckled softly at her remark. "Now I know I'll have to take the body and all, but to save us time, you can bring his remains here." She handed me a card across the table. It was from the crematorium. "Joanna, pardon me for asking, but why are you sharing this with me?" I asked her. "I'm just a medical examiner who hands the body over to whoever requests it." "Barry, that brings me to the other reason I wanted to have lunch with you today. I planned this one too, because it concerns you. When I woke up this morning, I wasn't going to yet, but I knew that this incident was just one of several. And if that bastard hadn't crashed coming home from one of his dates, you would have discovered it anyway." I just nodded for her to continue, munching on my sandwich. I had a pretty good idea where she was going with this. "Well, I don't know if you know anything or not, but my husband had an ongoing affair with your wife." She paused, waiting for the effect, and when I didn't react, she continued. "Unfortunately, she wasn't the only one he was flirting with. I discovered this 3 months ago when I found a DVD accidentally left in Patrick's office while I was on a business trip. The stars of the show were your wife and Patrick. I was riddled with anger about it for a while, but I kept it a secret and hired a detective to dig up as much as I could about the whole sordid mess." She handed me a package and I took it. "It's a DVD of the evidence I've collected. There are videos and photos from the last 3 months. Judging by some of the discussions, the celebrations have been going on for much longer. I think your wife has been participating in them for at least the last 6 months. The strangest thing about all of this was that I had no emotional trauma. I was emotionally flat. Joanna, just so you know, last night I discovered something was wrong when I went out on a call. I put the pendant on the table between us. I found it on the floor of your husband's car last night and recognized it as soon as I saw it. I bought it for her on our anniversary a couple years ago." Joanna picked up the pendant and examined it, playing with it and the necklace. "It's a nice picture," she said. Inside was a picture of Kim and me taken on the beach in Kiowa, South Carolina during that anniversary trip. "Yes, but it's a depressing memory now, Joanna. So where do we go from here, or should I ask, where do you go from here?" "Well, Barry, I'm going to burn the bastard's corpse and scatter the ashes." She grinned almost devilishly. I considered consoling my offended husband, but that seemed a bit tasteless. No, that would make me just as cheap, though there's nothing wrong with being cheap from time to time. She said again with a devilish smile. "I don't think I'm the kind of person who wouldn't say no, so Joanna, I guess I'm not having that much fun. I mean, it hasn't even been 12 hours from the opening to now, and from what you've already told me, I've been an ignorant bastard for a long time," I replied. "Barry, 3 months ago, I was the same way. If I hadn't found that DVD then, I'd probably be leading my life the same way I was before then. Oh, one more thing. I got tested for STDs a month ago, and I was clean, but I haven't had a relationship with my late husband since I discovered the horrible mess. From what I saw, not everything was safe sex. You might want to take that precaution too. We finished lunch and parted ways. Mrs. Knowles had no regret, no sadness, no grief. Hell, as far as I was concerned, she could have killed him. As for me, I walked around for a while trying to make sense of everything in my head. I was woefully clueless. Either that or Kim was the best damn actress in the state of Virginia. We never missed a minute of raucous sex, and I know I wasn't worthless in the bedroom. I have more than most men, and I never missed an opportunity to rock her world when I set my mind to it. I was still on duty, so I grabbed my keys and headed to the car. I glanced at the DVD in the passenger seat and turned toward the house. Kim would be showing properties all day, and I didn't expect her back until the evening. Sophie for the next few weeks, visiting Kim's parents in New Mexico, so I was home alone. The package contained the only DVD in the house. I started to open the box with the disc to insert it into the player, but my fingers were shaking, and common sense stopped me from continuing. Did I really want to sit here and familiarize myself with what I already knew was going to be on this disc? I repeatedly asked myself. And I didn't. After sitting for a few more minutes, I grabbed the disc, and after stowing it away in the office safe, I grabbed my keys and went for a drive. I headed toward Skyline Drive, thinking it was a good place to try and gather my thoughts about everything I'd discovered in the last few hours. But I was unsuccessful. Barry, we need you in Crozet. I've got a shooting victim here that we're told was accidental, stuff like that, the dispatcher told me. I knew it all perfectly well. The rest of the day passes, and for a while my problems disappear again. When I arrived at the address given, medical personnel and the sheriff's department were on the scene. Everything was just as the responders said it was. The man was cleaning his rifle and hadn't removed a round from the chamber, which is no fun at all. His widow was terribly upset and couldn't make any decisions, so we had one of the local funeral services pick up the body. The family would have to deal with it later. My old friend and Deputy Sheriff Dan Peterson was also on the scene. Pretty fucked up stuff, huh, Barry? I just nodded, not knowing what to say. Oh, speaking of that accident last night, I found that there seems to be evidence of a crime after all, he told me. This immediately piqued my interest. Rough play opens up a whole different rule book. What makes you say that, Dan? I asked in response. Well, the captain has probably already sent the order to your office, so the body has been frozen for further examination. It looks like there were collision marks on the driver's side rear fender and bumper, marks that couldn't have come from going down the ravine. The state accident investigation guys have been at the scene all morning and all afternoon, Dan told me. Jesus, that's a good find, I told him. Yeah, but not really. Someone had arranged for the victim to be run off the road, so the captain called the state administration. At this point, my mind was running at a mile a minute. All I could think about was Joanna Knowles. I wasn't ready to talk to Dan or anyone else. It was a turnaround that would turn our whole lives upside down. We parted ways with Dan and I headed back to the office to reopen the Patrick Knowles case. This involved a major quandary for me, as I was now an interested party in what might turn out to be a vehicular homicide case. The primary action was to insulate myself from a repeat of the direct examination. I asked for a favor and had another lab employee certified to perform the examination. In doing so, I asked our secretary for a preliminary report from the medical examiner, and then I apologized and called. Kim, listen, I'm going to be busy with a reopened investigation into the accident that occurred last night down the road from our house. There seems to be suspicion about the circumstances of how the car ended up in the ravine, I told my wife. Do we know who died? I didn't hear anything about it on the radio or in the papers this morning. She asked me. There is one victim at this moment, and his name was Patrick Knowles. According to the registration, he lived in Scottsville. I answered. There was a long pause on the other end of the wire before she answered. Oh, I don't think I've ever heard of him, she replied in a more muffled voice. I didn't try to think of anything more than I already suspected. She was his whore, and had just discovered he was dead. What else could she have said? Well, we'll know more when the state finishes its. It's investigation at the scene. In the meantime, I'll finish up here this afternoon and evening, and I'll see you tonight, I told her. And then we ended the conversation with the usual, love you and such. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I've followed all the protocols of official prejudicial conflict, except for one thing. I haven't called my supervisor in Richmond yet. Before I can do so, I need to speak with my attorney. I laid out everything I knew, including my conversation with Mrs. Knowles that morning, my suspicions of Kim's adultery, and more. Upon hearing that I had not played the DVD, he told me to leave it untouched in my safe and that he would pick it up himself. Immediately afterward, I called my supervisor in Richmond. He removed me from the case, and then my attorney arranged a meeting with state police investigators. Before the meeting, my attorney and I went back to the house to get the files. Later that evening, I sat across from Kim at the table and drank wine from a glass. She is a beautiful woman, 5'7", magnificently built, dark loose hair with deep brown eyes. Her looks hide her 40 years of age very well. I have loved this woman for 16 years now, and it has been a difficult 24 hours. "Have you found out if Mr. Knowles was killed on the road?" she asked me. "Concluded that a crime did take place and identified the culprit," I replied. "Really? And who is that?" she asked nervously, sitting on the edge of the seat. "His mistress," I said, looking her straight in the eye. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Earlier that day, my attorney had accompanied me to interview and discuss the case with 2 state police investigators. We went over the timeline from the night before and everything that had happened during the day. I relayed my conversation with Mrs. Knowles and the evidence packet she had provided me, and which my attorney placed on the table, after explaining that I had not viewed the DVD and that he himself was unable to open it when he actually inserted it into his player due to the encryption with the password. The 2 investigators looked at each other and asked me to continue after I took the DVD and handed it to the other woman who had joined us in the room. She then pulled out the files and ran several programs to open their contents. I explained my suspicions from the night before by saying that I had found a pendant and its significance in the deceased's car. "Mr. Nelson, the woman you met with this morning was actually named Mrs. Patrick Knowles?" one of the investigators asked. "Yes, sir. That is correct," I replied. They looked at each other again. "Mrs. Joanna Riley Knowles passed away 6 years ago," said the other. "I got it," the lady working with the files exclaimed. She plugged the cable into her laptop and the contents of the screen appeared on the monitor on the side wall. "This is a preview for all the parts," she spoke into the microphone. "I'll save the documentation and hidden files on server 24 in folder 8. A DVR video opened, showing Patrick Knowles' car being hit or pushed from behind on Langhorne Road and hitting a guardrail and falling into a ravine. The scene switched to the camera capturing the smoking wreckage 76 meters below. From that point on, the video switched to sexual content. We watched as the man, who we assumed was Patrick Knowles, clenched his tense buttocks, fucking the dark-haired woman beneath him. The 2 of them bonked like that for 3 or 4 minutes until he discharged into his mistress. The scene moved on to another encounter with a different timestamp and with everything pretty much the same. There were 8 separate scenes in all in the same house, mostly just fornication, but the couple had quite a luxurious blowjob. It was awkward with the lady officer in the room, but she acted exceptionally professional. The next scene sent a chill down my spine. It showed Joanna approaching my wife at a realtor meeting the night before and introducing herself during small talk. The camera must have been placed on her lapel or somewhere else, attached to her blouse or jacket. Kim was dressed in her usual dinner attire, and one thing became obvious. She was wearing the pendant as they talked. The camera moved around the room, and after a few minutes, we heard the woman whisper under her breath, "I'm gonna cut your fucking heart out, bitch!" And the camera focused on Kim. The pendant was gone. I remembered something that wasn't there earlier this morning. I don't know if Joanna actually opened the pendant, but she knew about the good photo inside it. Finally, the file reached the last scene. It showed a dark-haired, attractive petite woman sitting in a chair with a camera, telling us, the audience, that she had killed Patrick Knowles after being his lover for 6 years. He told her that he had found someone else and had fallen in love with her, and that she intended to leave her husband and stay with him. She had that devilish grin again. It was Joanna Knowles, whom I had met earlier that morning. Her last words were brief. "Mr. Nelson, I'm going to kill her for you, to spare you all this," she said in farewell. I sat there confused, not knowing what to think, and scared at the same time. This was a seriously angry woman. One of the officers got up and left the room, only to return a couple minutes later. He opened a folder with a handwritten note at the top. The woman's name was Michelle Rogan, and earlier this afternoon we found her body after a neighbor called us in reference to a gunshot in her home. This is an apparent suicide. She claimed to be Joanna Knowles, the wife of Patrick Knowles. There was also a note on her body directing us to another address with another note. "Tell Mr. Nelson I'm sorry, but it had to happen." We called a team to go to that address and found another gunshot victim, this time a 38-year-old wife and mother named Allison Nelson, formerly married to a man named Carl Nelson. They had 3 children together. By that time, we had received a letter from Richmond about my suspension, so we called in an expert from Lynchburg. I think the DVD along with the handwritten note from the perpetrator will close the case. We want to thank you for coming, and I'm sure we will be in touch to close any pending matters. We all shook hands, and the attorney and I left the building and parted ways, promising to meet the next morning to close any open issues. Kim and the victim, Allison, could have been sisters, so similar in appearance. Allison's address is 2 streets closer to Langhorne than we are. "His mistress?" Kim asked. "One of them, I think," I replied. "My wife Kim gives really great blowjobs at the end."